Hey, it's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probe.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
In the screen there, if you're watching Facebook Live and YouTube, that young lady right there, that is Ruth Graham, and she is one of the daughters of Ruth and Reverend Billy Graham. Ruth, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Very well.
Well, as we mentioned earlier before we started, we have a mutual friend, and this friend texted me and said, "Hey, how would you like to talk with Ruth Graham?" And then I was waiting for the punchline, right? And so, okay, what's the catch? It's like, and then I realized he was on, that he had the opportunity for us. And I said, well, do I like chocolate cake? Of course I want to talk with Ruth Graham. Thank you so much for your time. You're there in your beautiful home in Virginia. How's it going there for you guys?
It's very hot.
Sounds like Atlanta.
That's right. So if we can get through these next several days, maybe we'll survive. But boy, it's been hot.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. So have you been having a good summer so far, though? Have you been able to relax and have just have some chill time?
Well, I'm writing a new book. So I'm on the tail end of it, but I've been concentrating. And this has been a wonderful opportunity with this COVID. My subject is loneliness. And what a perfect time to write about loneliness is when we're all locked down.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Well, it is interesting. None of us have faced anything like this. And thank God for technology, because Dan and I and a number of other talk show hosts can do their jobs from home. That's where we are. This is not the CNN Center, although I do say that from time to time. It's pretty impressive.
And this is not actually a beach, although I wish it was.
But the good news
is actually a wall.
It is. I thought you had a green screen there.
But the beauty of technology is that we can do that. But honestly, this brought on a lot of loneliness because we had to socially isolate. And Dan and I and all the crew on our floor downtown Atlanta, we love being with each other, but we haven't seen each other face to face, over 100 days?
Since mid-March.
Yeah. So perfect timing for this book. We'd love to talk to you about that coming up. Now, we're going to talk with you in just a few about, now I just have half the title here and you gave me the rest earlier, Forgiving My Father, Forgiving Myself. What is the rest of that title?
An invitation to the miracle of forgiveness.
So we're talking about forgiveness, which is something that not only do we need, but is something that we need to give as well, right? So we'll get into that in a second. All right. I would be amiss if I didn't ask you about your parents, your mother and dad, both.
They are alive. They are having a ball.
They're not worried about COVID at all.
Not at all. And for once in my life, I know where my father is. Most of the time, we did not know where he was, but now I know where he is.
That's funny.
That's very funny. Yeah, what a blessing your parents have been to so many people. Should we call them cultural icons? I mean, just so much that they both gave. It wasn't just your dad, although he did. Your mom gave as well. And the sacrifices that they both made, and all the kids, the sacrifices that the kids and the grandkids made, so much fruit because they were willing to say yes. So just want to talk a little bit about your mom and dad, because really we want to talk about your book and what's going on in your world. What was the favorite part, do you think, when you had your mom and dad home together, the family? Was it holidays? Did you get many holidays together? What was in your mind the greatest time that you guys had together?
Daddy was always home for Christmas, except one year when he went to Korea during the war. I was about 2 years old, so I don't remember it. But I remember Thanksgiving one year. I was in boarding school, and he wanted to go to Vietnam. They'd asked him to go to Vietnam for Thanksgiving. And I was just so heartbroken that he was going to not be there for Thanksgiving. But Mother never bemoaned the fact that he was gone. She just looked forward to when he would come home. And so we all enjoyed our family time together. When we had it, was so rare. And I think probably one of my favorite times was when we were, as a family, we were invited to go to Switzerland for the summer as guests of a family over there. And we just had a wonderful time. Daddy was doing meetings all over Europe, but he would come home to this house that had been rented for us. And we had a wonderful time as a family.
Now, you had a nickname growing up, and I just have to know, how did you get the name Bunny?
That is not fair. When I was born, I was apparently covered with a little soft fuzz, and they said I was
Oh no!
Yes.
I thought maybe you just like to jump around a lot, and that's why they called you that.
We're talking with Ruth Graham. We're going to talk with her about a brand new book that she has out. Well, it's been out since March, hasn't it? What's that?
October.
Okay. And we're also, if we get a second, we'll talk about the book that's coming out. Right now, we're talking just a little bit about her father and her mom. I think about your dad over the years, and even as a kid. I mean, I'm 60 now. I used to watch him on television, and just was inspired by the simple yet powerful message. And what really moved me too was, over the years, I had read that he pretty much had the opportunity to speak into so many presidents' lives. I mean, a lot of people's lives, stars, but the presidents' lives. And we just appreciate that. Were you ever starstruck at all because he had so many people that were around him? Now, I would have been starstruck with all the folks that he had an influence on, and he had such great influence. Were you ever starstruck at all or surprised?
Mother and Daddy were very calculated in keeping us away from that. We lived in Montreat, North Carolina, and we did not travel with Daddy, and all those famous people didn't come to our homes. Only one time did President Nixon come to our house. And we had an opera singer that came and stayed with us, and we had the one person I was starstruck with was Gary Player.
Oh wow, the golfer.
Yes, Gary Player was so kind to us children, and it was interesting when certain people came to the house, how they treated the children. And the opera star was not very nice to the children. Paul Harvey was very gracious to the kids. So I just, and as a kid, that means a lot to you.
Paul Harvey, boy, couldn't you just sit there and listen to him all day long? I mean,
yeah.
Wow, that is so neat.
And there are generations of people now, because he's been gone for several years, maybe 20, I don't know. And they have no idea. Just this guy, what a legend, that guy. Yeah. We're talking with Ruth Graham, and we're talking a little bit about her mom and her dad. All right, Ruth, let's go ahead and get a little bit into the book, and then we'll take just a pause, and then we'll get more into the book. The book, again, is called Forgiving My Father, Forgiving Myself, and the rest of the title.
An Invitation to the Miracle of Forgiveness.
See, that's why I have Dan, because I tend to forget. He just kind of fills in the rest.
There you go. I fill in the blank. Yep.
Let's go ahead and in the beginning. What is the book about, and why did you write it now?
Years ago, I was invited to Angola prison to speak to the prisoners there. That's one of the largest prisons in our country. It's 5,000 men in there for life, and I was invited to speak, and I went, and while I was there, they asked if I would go to visit death row. And I thought, prison is one thing, death row is a whole different thing. But I said, yes, of course I would go. So we walked through the gates, and they clanked behind us, and the razor wire was glistening in the sun. And I could see the guard ahead of me, and I was in a holding pen. And my gate finally opened, and I walked in, and he pointed me down a concrete corridor, and it was lined with cells. And as I approached the first cell, this man stuck out his hand and shook my hand. And so I visited with him a little bit, and we found out a little bit about him. And he said, "Can I sing you a song?" And I said, "Certainly." So he stood back, and he took a deep breath, and he sang, "It is well with my soul." And I believed that it was. Then as I prayed with him and began to say goodbye, he said, "Can I give you a gift?" And I said, "My goodness, what can this man give me?" He had woven a cross out of bed sheet threads.
Wow.
And it hangs in my home now. Just just a little gift. And we said goodbye, and I never thought our paths would cross again. But when I got home, I got an email from a lady, and she said, did you really go to Angola's death row? And I said, yes, ma'am, I did. And I emailed her back, and she said, did you meet Michael? And I said, I met lots of people. Let me find out if I met a Michael. So I called Burl Cain, the warden, and found out that, yes, in fact, I had met Michael. And she said, then I emailed her and said, yes. And so she said, do you know if he's a believer? And so I said, well, I got to call Burl Cain and find out. So I called Burl, he's a believer. And I wrote her back and I said, yes, he's a believer, but what is your interest in this young man? And she said, years ago, he brutally murdered my grandson. And I want to know that he's going to be in heaven with me.
Wow.
Wow.
And I thought, at that point, I didn't know anything about forgiveness. You know, my understanding was so shallow and so small that I wanted to investigate it. And so this was a book I wrote really to investigate what forgiveness really is.
Wow. Ruth Graham, we're talking to her about her latest book. Dan, do you remember we had a former warden from Angola on this show?
It was Reverend Warden Burl Cain, yes.
What a blessing. I mean, all the things that he was able to do while he was there, and just God's touch on him, and then so many inmates, prisoners there in Angola, which is had the reputation as the bloodiest prison in America. We are talking to her, and we may get into a new book that she's there putting together in Virginia, Ruth Graham. What a great time to talk with Ruth Graham here. And we're talking about a book that she's had out since October. It's Forgiving My Father, Forgiving Myself. Dan?
Now, Ruth, as you told the story about meeting Michael in Angola, and then hearing from the person whose was the grandson, the life that Michael took, and just hearing that, I mean, how do you think we get to a point where someone who took the life of someone that we love dearly, and she was able to get to a point where she was praying for this man and his soul and his salvation so that she could see him in heaven? How do we get to that point?
It is a process, and it takes time. It's not overnight. I think we make the decision to forgive. And in a situation like that, it would probably take a long time to even reach that point. That you wanted to make that kind of decision. So you make the decision, and A.W. Tozer said that when we make the decision, that's the doorway by which we let the Holy Spirit in and inhabit that decision and help us carry it out. So it's only the work of the Holy Spirit that does it.
Yeah.
Now, Ruth, when you sat down to write this book, do you have a favorite chapter? And was there a chapter that maybe you went back and read it, and maybe it was a difficult chapter to put together, but you got through it, you put it on there, and then the response has been amazing? Did you have any kind of experience like that?
Well, one of the premises of the book is that forgiveness is not about us. So often you hear it's a letting go, it's a way to get healthy emotionally, it's whatever. But it's really not about us. It's about God, because God's heartbeat is forgiveness. And I think one of the hardest chapters to write was the part of the crucifixion. To forgive, we have to spend time at the foot of the cross, because forgiveness is unfair. It's absolutely unfair. But when you sit at the foot of the cross for any length of time, you begin to understand that if he forgave me of all that I've ever done, then I need to enter into forgiveness.
I'm talking to Ruth Graham, daughter of Billy Graham and the author of the book, Forgiving My Father, Forgiving, let me make sure I get it correct here. I don't want to get Forgiving My Father, Forgiving Myself, an invitation to the miracle of forgiveness. Now, in the title, you talk about forgiving yourself. Talk about the importance of that. And a lot of times that's really hard for us to do. Sometimes it's easy for me to say, okay, I forgive so-and-so, but forgiving myself for things that I've done in the past. Talk about the importance of that.
Very difficult to forgive yourself. Again, it's a process, and it's a decision that you make. But for me, I have had 4 failed marriages. And when that happened, after the 4th marriage, I thought something was truly wrong with me. And I thought, I even wondered whether I was even saved. How could I have done this again? And I was talking with a friend, and he looked at me and he said, Ruth, he said, did you ever think that perhaps you felt abandoned as a child by your father? And I didn't want that to be true, because my father is my hero. I absolutely love my father. No criticism of my father, but the fact that he traveled so much did have an impact. And you talked in the introduction about the sacrifices the family made. That is true. We did make sacrifices, and it impacted my little girl's heart, because as a little girl, I wanted him to tuck me in bed. As a little girl, I wanted him to teach me to ride the bicycle, but he wasn't there. And so often, the more I needed him, the farther away he was. And we just didn't have all that much time with him. So I did feel abandoned, but I'd never thought that way. But that piece of the puzzle fit. And once I realized why I was searching for security, and that's what it was, and with all these husbands, I realized I could forgive myself. There are no excuses, but sometimes there are reasons. And you have to give yourself grace. And you have to absolutely surrender yourself to God and say, okay, God, this was my life. This is what I've done. But Lord, you love me. You have forgiven me. And so I forgive myself. And God said, Jesus said, if you do not forgive, then I will not forgive. Well, if I don't forgive myself, and that's important. And that is a shocking statement that Jesus said. And I don't think that's really what it means, that he won't forgive us. I think it means that he takes it very seriously. That's how seriously he takes forgiveness.
We're talking with Ruth Graham about her brand new book. You talk about that, and it's like, for you to write that on paper and put that out there. I mean, what courage. What have you heard from folks that have read it? I'm sure you've had a few say, thank you so much because I felt the same. I've this happened. I thought it was me. I didn't know what to do. What have you heard?
Well, people who have read my books know that that's my style, that I'm transparent. I want to tell, because that's all I know to do, is just be transparent with my readers and let them know that I went through the struggle too. And so I don't think they're surprised, but they're always grateful. And so many people have come up and said, yes, I had 4 marriages too. And that means a lot to me, because it really, yes, it did take a lot of courage. I was interviewed by Glenn Beck, years ago, and he was talking to me, and I was telling him about, I'd been married 3 times, but I didn't tell him about the 4th. So I wasn't honest. And it worried me to death. And this year he interviewed me again. And I had to say to him, Glenn, I have to ask your forgiveness because I was not honest with you. And I think it's important to be honest. And of course, if you tell on yourself, nobody else can get you,
Yeah.
So I tell on myself, and I think people appreciate that. And it's not what they expect. They expect, me to be perfect and put together and all that stuff. And I have not been put together. I've just been pasted together. I'm grateful for God's grace. My life verse is John 1:16. Of his fullness have we all received grace upon grace. And I have been given grace upon grace.
Forgiving My Father, Forgiving Myself, an invitation to the miracle of forgiveness. Wow, what a book. You can find it at Amazon.com, anywhere you can get books, and also at RuthGraham.com. Real quick, while we got just a couple minutes, we want to talk about the book that you're working on, Loneliness. And wow, what a time to be talking about that, as we mentioned earlier in the program, during a time of COVID when we're so isolated in so many ways. I've faced depression because of it. I'm sure loneliness is a big issue right now. Talk about what made you start writing this book.
Well, it is a big issue. It's just like forgiveness is so relevant today. I mean, we see what's going on in our country. We need forgiveness. We need to give each other forgiveness. But loneliness is something that we have all experienced. Now, maybe some people in an apartment with 3 small kids will not say they've been lonely. And I understand that. But I know I've experienced, beforehand, if you had asked me if I ever got lonely, I would have said no, because I'm busy and I do and I go. But I've had to face my own loneliness during this time and admit that I was lonely. And I think that there are rewards of loneliness. And that's where this book is going, is what are the rewards of loneliness? Loneliness is different than solitude. And solitude is very beneficial. Loneliness can be beneficial too. We just have to be able to use it and use it as an opportunity. And we can do lots of things. I just finished a chapter on serving others while you're lonely. You know, don't always look inward, but send a meal to a friend, send some flowers to a friend. Think of other ways to take care of other people, because when we're serving others, we're not worried about ourselves. And that, I think, is a blessing that God has given us. Also, I talk about the value of community. We have to be in community, and right now we can't be. Right. But I have my family. I have 2 daughters who live in the same neighborhood. So yes, we do Sunday dinner like the Blue Bloods does. Such a blessing. So I'm grateful for that.
Ruth Graham on with us today, Facebook Live, YouTube, and on the radio. Real quick, Ruth, when do you think that'll be released? I know you're still writing. You think spring 21? What?
I think it'll probably be fall of 21. You know, publishing a book can be creepingly slow.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yes.
We would love to get a chance to talk to you about that book again when closer to time to release. You've been such a blessing. Thank you so much for what you have done. As I mentioned, what you're doing now. You are just amazing. Forgiving my father, forgiving myself, an invitation to the miracle of forgiveness. Check it out on Amazon, and also you can go to ruthgraham.com. Hey, we'll take a break. Let's do that. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.